Hey friends, David Schimmel here. And today I'm going to show you how to make simple but effective drum loops in Ableton using free samples from Cymatics. We won't need any advanced plugins, just the drum rack that comes with all versions of Ableton, so let's get into it. To start, go to the Cymatics free download vault, I'll put a link to that in the description, and then click on one of the free download buttons. Enter your name and email, and then click the link in the email that they'll send you to get to the actual free samples download page. And then scroll down and pick up the Trap Starter Pack and the House Starter Pack. Click download on both of those. Next, open Ableton and scroll down to the user library in the left side panel. Then, navigate to where you downloaded the samples and extract the zip files to their own folders. Once that's done, drag the folders into Ableton so you have access to the samples there. If you want, you can right-click on the sample folders and add them to your favorites so that you can access them more quickly next time. In order to program our drum loop, we're going to use one of our MIDI tracks. So go into the left side panel, select Instruments, and then click and drag the drum rack down to the instrument lane on the MIDI track. You'll see the drum rack appear here, and it has a number of squares, each with a different MIDI note on it. This is where we'll put the samples so that they can be triggered by the associated MIDI note. For our first drum loop, let's make a house beat. Go to the tempo indicator and change it to 128. Now, open up the house starter pack and go to drums, one-shots, and then to kicks. Let's audition the kicks and pick one that we like. This one sounds good to me. Click and drag the sample you like onto C1 in the drum rack. Next, zoom in on the arrangement view by holding Ctrl and sliding the mouse wheel forward. Then select one measure's worth of time and press Ctrl-Shift-M to create a new MIDI clip. You'll see our sample down here in the piano roll, and you'll also notice that the resolution starts out at 1/16. So each of these squares is a 16th note. If you click in the piano roll and you press Ctrl-1, you can increase the resolution. But since we want to make a 4 on the floor beat, we want to decrease it to 1/4. So press Ctrl-2 until this says 1/4 down here. Then press B to enable the drawing tool and click once in each of the columns to add 4 quarter notes. That sounds like this. If you press Tab to switch to the mixer view and then play back your clip, you'll notice that the kick drum is hitting pretty loud. -3 decibels in my case. If we leave this like that, then as we add more instruments to our mix, we run the risk of clipping on the master channel because we don't have enough headroom. As a rule of thumb, I like to have the kick hitting around -9 decibels while I'm putting a track together, so go back to the drum rack and lower the volume in the sample editor until the kick is hitting at -9. Perfect. Back in the arrangement view, let's add a snare drum to complement our kick. So open the snares folder and pick one that sounds good to you. Drag it into the drum rack, then open the MIDI clip from before and you'll see that a new row has been added for our snare. Switch to the drawing tool and add notes on the second and fourth beat, and you get this. This sounds okay, but let's liven things up a bit by layering a clap sample on top of our snare. So open the claps folder and drag house clap 1 into the drum rack. You'll notice a bit of silence here at the beginning of the sample before it fades in, and this is perfect for layering with our snare, which has a strong transient right from the beginning. We don't want these two to compete for headroom with each other, so the silence at the beginning of the clap creates a nice pocket for the snare to fit into. To hear how these sound together, let's first mute the kick drum by clicking this M button next to the sample in the drum rack, then go to the MIDI clip and add notes on the second and fourth beat for the clap. Here's what that sounds like. Now let's adjust the volumes of our snare and clap so that they mesh nicely with the kick drum. Select the MIDI clip and press Ctrl-L to loop it. Then, in the drum rack, bring the volumes of the clap and snare all the way down and unmute the kick drum. Now, as we play our loop, gradually bring up the volume of the snare and clap until everything sounds good together. You can hold Shift while clicking and dragging a slider to make fine-tuned adjustments to its value. Let's add an open hi-hat on the offbeats to create that classic boots and cats sound we all know and love. Open the cymbals folder, go to hi-hats open, and then select one of the samples you like. Drag it into the drum rack, then open the MIDI clip and change the resolution to 1/8. Now, add notes on the hi-hat sample to every other column, like so, and here's what that sounds like. Finally, let's add some more motion to the drum loop by introducing some 16th note closed hi-hats. Pick a closed hat sample you like, and add it to the drum rack. Then, go to the MIDI clip and increase the resolution to 1/16. Then, add a few closed hi-hat notes to taste. That sounds like this. Because the notes are all perfectly on the grid, it creates this kind of driving, robotic sound, which works for some genres like techno, but for house we want something a bit groovier. So we're going to add a swing feel to the notes by going to the Grooves category in the left side panel, and then scrolling down until you get to the Swing 16th section. You can click one of the grooves to preview it, and you'll notice that as the number increases, so does the intensity of the swing feel. We'll pick something moderate like 64, so click and drag that onto the clip, and you can see that the groove has been applied. Now when we listen to the loop, you'll hear a nice shuffling sound in the closed hi-hats, which will really get those heads bopping. To speed things up for next time, we can go to the MIDI track and save our drum rack by clicking this disc icon and giving it a name. Furthermore, we can save the clip by clicking and dragging it into the clips folder here and giving it a name as well. And now we don't have to start from scratch next time we're making a house track. Of course, we can't have a song that's only one measure long, so to extend our drum loop, mouse over the upper right-hand corner of the clip and click and drag it out to say 4 measures. You'll see that Ableton has replicated the contents of our bass clip across all 4 measures. If we make changes to the bass clip, they'll be reflected in the copies. So if we do this, let's say, we turn off the loop, you can hear that our changes are now reflected in the extended segment. I've got one more trick to show y'all, so let's create a new Ableton project by pressing Ctrl-N, and then set the tempo to 150. We're gonna make a trap beat. As before, we're going to add a drum rack to our MIDI channel. So do that, and then go to where you stored the trap starter pack and open the kick folder. Pick a kick that you like, and add it to the drum rack. Open the snares folder and choose a sample. And we don't really need to layer anything on top of it here because in trap, the snare tends to be a shorter sound. Switch to the arrangement view, and this time we're going to select 4 measures worth of time. Insert a new MIDI clip and change the resolution to 1/8. Now program the beat like so. That sounds like this. Next, we'll add a closed hat to our drum rack. And one of the characteristics of trap music is really fast hi-hats, so we could go into the MIDI clip and manually enter in a bunch of notes, but there's another way that should save us some effort and unlock new opportunities for creativity. So go back to your drum rack, then select the arpeggiator from the MIDI effects category in the left side panel and drag it just to the left of your hi-hat sample. Now when you press this play button, you'll hear a continuous stream of 8th note hi-hats. That's because what the arpeggiator is doing is it's generating MIDI notes based on its parameters, and right now the rate is set to 1/8. So if we change that to 1/16, then we'll get 16th notes. Now go to your MIDI clip, Create a note in the first cell next to your hi-hat sample, then click and drag the right side of that note all the way to the end of the clip so that we get one long note. Now, we'll get a bunch of hi-hats playing on top of our beat thanks to the arpeggiator. We can take this one step further by recording real-time changes to the rate and inject a bit of personality into the hi-hats. So go back to the drum rack, right-click the rate knob in the arpeggiator, and click Map to Macro 1. Then right-click the rate knob again and click Edit Macro Map. We don't need the values at the extremes of the range because they're not that musically relevant for this genre, so bring the min up to 1/32 and the max down to 1/8. Now if you spin the dial in the drum rack macro section, you'll see that it only goes from 1/8 to 1/32. Press Escape to exit macro mapping edit mode, and now to record our real-time changes to the rate parameter, first click the plus sign button next to the record button to enable MIDI overdubbing. This way we won't erase any of the notes that we've already put down when we start recording. Also, click this barbell icon to enable automation recording. Now, put your cursor to the left of your MIDI clip, press F9 to start recording, and spin the macro dial in the drum rack as you wish to change up the hi-hat rate. If you press A, you'll be able to see an orange line indicating the automation you recorded, and you can edit it further as you wish. So now you know how to set up the foundational drum loops for your next EDM masterpiece. Along the way, we covered layering samples, adding grooves to clips, mapping parameters onto macros, and recording automations in real time. If you've enjoyed our time here together, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you here next time. Happy producing!